Eddie, uneducated person, come from a large family, 13 in their family. Mom and dad and 11 siblings, and they had an old wagon that they tied a mule to every Saturday and came to town, and they would come to Logs and Lilies, which is the mercantile store downtown, and they would unhitch that old mule, and then they'd sit there and whittle and play dominoes all day, and all of us kids would go hang out with the Hootslers. It was the Hootsler family, and Ed at some point started riding his bicycle instead of riding on that wagon. Everybody else rode on the wagon. That worked to his benefit later on in life, and then I'll tell you about that, about the tragedy that took place in the song. But the first time that we saw Eddie, this first verse actually happened to my dad, and but I took artistic license and just switched it over to me just so I could go ahead and sing it and make it sound real. But just remember that in '62, the first verse actually happened to my pop. And Ed is famous for many things, being a nice guy for one, and uneducated, can't read or write. I think he can read a little bit now. He's 77 years old now, so I've known him a long time. And he's got a belt buckle. I'm not kidding you. His belt buckle is this big around, and it's got his initials on it, E.H. welded on this belt buckle. It looks like it's huge. I mean, he weighs about 80 pounds. The belt buckle weighs about 80 pounds. So, and he's got an 8-track player that he listens to. He's mounted on his bicycle there. Anyway, that's enough for the rest of the song. I'll just tell you about him. He's a great guy, and I hope you know somebody like Ed in your life, or like Joe. Does make life, does make all this stuff that's going on right now seem pretty trivial, actually, compared to... I'll get there, hang on. That's close. There's a guy in my hometown. He just rides his bike around. A weathered face and calloused hands, and a belt buckle big as a frying pan. He ain't seeking wealth or fame. Eddie is his name. Now, the first time that I saw Eddie, well, I thought he passed away, because he was laying in a wheelbarrow out behind the War Horse Cafe. So I ran inside and I yelled, "There's a guy out back. I think he's dead." The sheriff said, "No, he's just sleeping, boy. That there is Eddie. There's a guy in my hometown. He just rides his bike around. Now he's a self-appointed security guard. He checks the locks and the doors after dark. You know, I would trust him with my life. My favorite dog, my pocket knife, Eddie. Eddie. Now Eddie, well, he lost his whole family back in 1968. They headed home in their old wagon, and the hour had gotten late. Somewhere out on Yancey Highway, this car came around the bend, and there were no lights on that old wagon, and that was the end. But not for Ed. rides his bike around. Yeah, he spends a lot of time at the coffee shop, but he never has to pay for a single drop. Now when Eddie's gone, one thing's for sure, Divine won't be Divine anymore. You know, you shouldn't judge a man, try to measure his true worth by the money in his pocket, or the stains upon his shirt, or by the lack of some diploma, maybe the hat upon his head. 'Cause if you do, you'll always be wrong when you meet a guy like Eddie. There's a guy in my hometown, he just rides his bike around. He's got an 8-track player mounted on his handlebars. He does. He's got a battery on the back and some headphones, and he listens to 8-track tapes. Nobody else listens to him, but he buys them for a nickel a piece at flea markets. His very favorite tape is Tammy Wynette and George Jones. There's a guy in my hometown, he just rides his bike around.